Yeah, in this video session, we will deal with a very important concept, the concept of elasticity, and specifically we will look at one type of elasticity, and that is price elasticity of demand. We will define it. Then we will do the calculation, how do you calculate the price elasticity of demand. And then also we will look at, in further sessions, we will look at the relationship between price elasticity of demand and total revenue. And then we will also look at, who pays the tax, who carries the burden of a tax, and that is determined by the price elasticity of demand and supply. So the first thing that we need to define is what is price elasticity of demand, and you can see on the slide there is the definition of that. When we deal with elasticity, we look at the responsiveness of two variables, right? So basically it refers to how one variable is responsive to changes in another variable. So when we focus on price elasticity of demand, the two variables here are price and quantity demanded. So these are the two variables. So what we will look at is, when we look at price elasticity of demand, we will look at if there's a change in the price, what will happen with the quantity demanded? Will it increase or decrease? Now, based on what we have looked at in chapter 3, the law of demand, we saw that price and quantity demanded are inversely related. So if the price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. If the price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. So price and quantity demanded is inversely related. That is according to the law of demand. So what we are focusing on in this chapter, here in chapter 3, we looked at the direction of the change. If the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. If the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. But it doesn't say anything about the magnitude, the size of the change. And this is where price elasticity of demand comes in. It calculates the percentage change in the quantity demanded if there's a change in the price. So what we will then look at, what is the price elasticity of demand? It measures the percentage change in the quantity demanded because of the percentage change in the price. So we have got two variables here, price and quantity demanded. So how we defined price elasticity of demand, percentage change. Now this symbol, the triangle, means change in the price, which will lead to a percentage change in the quantity demanded. So it's a very important concept, because now we can compare maybe the price elasticity of demand of various products, maybe of cigarettes with some luxury item, etc., etc., because we can compare the percentage changes, which is relative changes, right? So this is what we are looking at in price elasticity of demand. Now there's a general formula for price elasticity of demand, and you can see there, maybe not in the slope, but basically in your textbook as well. When you look at price elasticity of demand, you will see ED. Now what is ED? ED is the elasticity coefficient. All right? So we need to determine the elasticity coefficient. D stands for demand. Some textbooks use P, which is price elasticity of demand. So ED, now the general formula for price elasticity of demand is the percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. That is a general formula for price elasticity of demand. So if you apply that formula and then, say for example, by using some numbers, then ED, say for example, we can use a textbook. If the price changes by 10%, okay, then what will happen? If the price changes by, if the price goes up by 10%, that is the price. What will happen with the quantity demanded? Quantity demanded, according to the law of demand, will decrease. And we say for example, the quantity demanded decreased by 20%. So if you apply the general formula of price elasticity of demand, then you will see that the percentage change in the price is 10% plus 10%, and then that lead to a 20% decline in the quantity demanded. So if you simplify that fraction, in fact, then you get -2. But as economists, we ignore the minus sign. We are only interested in the absolute value of this figure. And what is this 2? This is the elasticity coefficient. This is ED. Okay? So we are only interested in the absolute value, and we ignore the minus sign, although we know that it's a minus, because price and quantity demanded is inversely related. If the one goes up, the other one goes down, right? So this is ED, this is the elasticity coefficient, and we forget about the minus sign. That is the first point, right? So this is this is the general formula. Okay, so in the exam, in the test, I will already give you sometimes this figure. I will give you the elasticity coefficient, and based on this figure, you will have to decide what type of elasticity is applicable, right? And we will come later to that. So what we have looked at now is, what is price elasticity of demand? It's the responsiveness of quantity demanded to changes in price, and we look at percentage changes, relative changes, and the benefit of that is we can compare then the price elasticity of demand of various products, the comparison, because we use relative changes, percentage changes. And then also what is important is then we can calculate the elasticity coefficient, where we look at the percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. That is a general formula for the price elasticity of demand. Okay, so that is the first introduction of price elasticity of demand. Now the second one is, and this is very important, how do we calculate price elasticity of demand? We know ED, this is the elasticity coefficient. Now we know what is the general formula. That is the percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price. Now, if you look at the one on top, that is your numerator, the percentage change in the quantity demanded. We can, if we use what we call the midpoint formula, we calculate the price elasticity of demand between 2 points on a curve, and we will come to that now. And that gives you a more realistic, value of the price elasticity of demand between 2 points on a linear demand curve. Now let's look at the formula, because the formula you have to write down first in the exam or in the test. So if you look at the percentage change in the quantity demanded, that is equal to what? That is, according to the midpoint formula, that is equal to the change in the quantity demanded. Now, what is the change in the quantity demanded? Is the absolute change in the quantity demanded because of the change in the price. And we will use an example now. And then you divide it by what? By the quantity demanded, but that is the average quantity demanded. So what is the average quantity demanded? That is the 2 quantity demanders divided by 2. Okay? So this is equal, the change in quantity demanded is equal to this. The change in the price is equal to what? Is equal to the change, the absolute change in the price. That means the change in the price from one price to another price. That is the absolute change in the price divided by what? By the average price. Now, this is what we call, when we use this formula, we calculate price elasticity of demand according to the midpoint approach or the midpoint formula. In other textbooks, they use another type of form, the arc elasticity. It means that you calculate the elasticity between 2 points. So this is exactly the same. Midpoint or arc elasticity is the same thing, right? So other textbooks use this terminology. So this is how you calculate the price elasticity of demand. So you use a general formula and you go further and you say the percentage change in the quantity demanded is equal to this, and the percentage change in the price is equal to this. Okay? So let's look at the practical example. And I will just use an example there. You can also look at the exhibit there in the textbook. But basically, let's look at my own example to calculate the price elasticity of demand according to the midpoint formula and using this formula. So we know what is the formula now. The change in the quantity demanded divided by quantity demanded average, right? And then that is your numerator. Your denominator is the absolute change in the price divided by the average price. Okay, so let's look at an example there. Say there are two prices. If you look at, maybe I will come back to this formula. Let's look at a diagram here which indicate two prices and two quantities. That is your price in rands. This is the quantity. So if you look at your demand curve, this is your demand curve, and let's say we start off from a price of 10 Rand per unit, and the quantity demanded at that price, we say it is, say for example, it is 50. When the price decrease, say to 6 Rand per unit, what will happen with the quantity demanded? It will increase because of the law of demand, say to 110. This is just hypothetical figures that I use. So there will be a movement along the demand curve from A to B because of the price decrease. So the two prices are 10 Rand and 6 Rand, and the two quantities is 50 and 110. Okay, so if we go back to our formula, now we have to substitute the values into our formula. So the two prices, if you just look at the two prices, it was 10 Rand declining to 6 Rand, and because of that, what happens with the quantity demanded? Increase from 50 to 110. So this information you will use in your formula. So what is the change in the quantity demanded? The absolute change. The absolute change in the quantity demanded is from 50 to 110. So what is the 50 to 110? That is an amount of 60. So the absolute change in the quantity demanded is 60, from 50 to 110. What is the average quantity? What is the denominator here? It is 50 plus 110. That gives you 160 divided by 2 to get the average. So what is the average quantity? The average quantity is 80. 160 divided by 2 is 80. So your denominator is 80, right? So that is above the line, okay, of the fraction. Now what is the change in the price? The price decreased from 10 Rand to 6 Rand. So the price decreased with 4 Rand. So forget minus sign. You're just interested in the absolute value, right? So the absolute change in the price is 4, from 10 Rand to 6 Rand. That is the absolute change, right? And then what is the average price? 10 plus 6 Rand, that gives you 16. 16, and 16 divided by 2 gives you 8. So the average price is 8. Okay? So now we have substituted, what is needed to calculate the elasticity coefficient or the price elasticity of demand between 2 points, the 2 points that is illustrated on that demand curve. You could see we are calculating the price elasticity of demand between point A, between point A and between point B, right? And in that case, we use the midpoint approach, which we will then use the two prices and the average of the two prices and the two quantities and the average of the two quantities. That is what is needed to calculate price elasticity of demand according to the midpoint approach. Okay, so now you've got your calculation, and remember in the exam or the test you can use non-programmable calculators, and you can just use your calculator to calculate this, and I'm having my calculator here. So let's look at basically the numerator, 60 over 80. If you divide 60 over 80, 60 divided by 80 gives you 0.75. 0.75, and then divided by what? Your denominator, 4 divided by 8. 4 divided by 8, that gives you what? 0.50, right? So that is then easy. 0.75 divided by 0.5, that gives you then what? 1.5. So 0.75 divided by 0.5 gives you 1.5. So what is 1.5? This 1.5 is the elasticity coefficient. Okay, that is the elasticity between 2 points on between point A and point B. So this is what we call the midpoint formula, or the midpoint approach, or the arc elasticity method of calculating the price elasticity of demand, where you use the average quantities and the two quantities and the average prices and the two prices to determine your elasticity coefficient. So this calculation is very important in terms of your semester test and also in terms of your exam. So please work through this example, and if you have problems, you can contact me anytime.